Well, happy Friday, my friends. I am here tonight, and this is an exciting show because I have been spending the week with none other than Jan Aldrich, who you've heard me talk about and interview on UFO Classified, and now he's on Expanding Frontiers Research with me in the studio. This is really what all of you have been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for, and it's been a very adventurous week. I want to thank all of you for staying up late, getting up early, watching this show, and making sure that other people understand the importance of what I am trying to do here. You can also go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out the great work that I'm doing with Jack Brewer and our nonprofit. And you can also definitely go to Patreon and pledge support for the show and for Expanding Frontiers Research. It takes a lot of money to not only start a nonprofit and to have a radio show and to maintain an archive. And so all of your donations are much appreciated, and we really appreciate it. I'm going to say, Mario, thank you again for always being here. Mario, for those of you who watch my show, has been a very important part for many, many years. He's been here with me almost since the beginning, and I really value his friendship and support. It means a lot to me. I also want to give a shout out to Mark O'Connell, who is here in listening to the show. And I want to, he's been on the show before. I need to get him back on. He's working on some great things, but he did a wonderful book, The Close Encounters Man, about J. Allen Hynek. And so definitely go check that out on Amazon. I want to thank Steve, and I want to thank Shadowy Spectrums, Peter and the Earth and Steve Long and everybody. Jim, here, it's wonderful for you to stay up late, Vancouver guy. Thanks, you guys, the Earth. So again, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me on my journey. And I also want to say hi to Alice Druffel and Carlos. I look forward to having you guys here. I know that you're watching tonight, and that means the world to me. So for those of you who have followed me over the past almost a decade now in the public forum of UFOs, you know that one of my passions is interviewing people and having that oral history preserved. I've been through a big change in my perspective on things, and I love to look back and listen to shows. Maybe sometimes I don't, but it is definitely an important part for my journey. And I appreciate you guys going back and seeing the process of me going from somebody who bought things that were being told to them, and now somebody who stepped back after hearing a lot of lines time after time, and after getting involved with certain people that I once held in high regard, and understanding that they're quite nefarious in their activities. And so I really hope that each and every one of you learns from the mistakes that I have made, and you can move forward in this subject with interest but skepticism. Make sure that you understand who is giving you your message, and also don't be afraid to do background research on a person. If somebody hides behind anonymity, you might want to check out that person or whoever that person says he is. Look at the information he or she, look at the information that they're putting forward, and just watch what you're doing. This is a very interesting field, which we're going to talk to Jan about, and I'm excited. So Jan Aldrich is an archivist and historian. He's traveled all over. He's spent 60 years now, Jan?
Yes, since I was a teenager.
Wow, that is so cool. 60 years, like interviewing interesting characters, like we talked about. I mean, visiting all of the archives across the country. You're on a mission now. You're here for 10 days, and then you're going up to visit, where you're going to Wyoming, right?
University of Wyoming. Dr. Richard Haynes' aircraft case files are up there.
That should be interesting. And you also were down at Rice University. Tell us where else you've been on your travels.
Well, I've been to about 100 institutions in 50 states and Canadian provinces. So I missed Alaska and Hawaii and Mississippi, but and of course Washington D.C. is a big place for if you want to get into UFO archives. The National Archives is there.
I've heard that that is so amazing. I can't wait to go someday.
It is, but it's like drilling for oil. A lot of times you come up with dry holes.
Sounds like Skinwalker Ranch. Oh, well, and hey, Drew, it's nice to see you. And Renee and B. Baker, thanks for Lord Ludicrous. Thanks for getting in here. So all of my friends in chat have been really looking forward to having you on the show. You've done a great deal of work with Project 1947. Can you explain to people that are new to the subject exactly what you've accomplished with Project 1947?
Well, it started out with I came back from overseas. I was in the Army, and so I retired. And I never stopped researching, but when you're overseas, it's a little harder. So I was looking for something to do, and I picked up Blocher's book, and I said, well, I helped him on this book. I think I want to continue his work. And I asked Don Berliner who was at the time head of the FUFOR, and I said, do you think I could get a grant to do further 1947 research? And he said, no, absolutely not. It's all been done. I said, oh, okay, that's a challenge. Let's go. So I said, okay, I'm going to take myself out to Washington State, Oregon, and Idaho and do a little snooping around. And I got into their university and used the newspapers, and there were plenty of new things. And Don was a little taken back, and he said, okay, send me a proposal. So then I said, I will try to, I was hoping for 3 years, but I only got enough money to do 1 year. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do the rest on my own expenses. And when I start putting stuff on the internet, it's free. In other words, I had to write some things for FUFOR, but I said from here on in, it's free. And that's what I've been doing since 1997.
And so FUFOR, for people who don't understand what that organization was, can you describe a little bit about that?
Yeah, they fund research, and it's unfortunate that the people are not giving money to an organization like FUFOR because they funded a lot of research in various projects, and some were very inexpensive but had a big return. But the people, unfortunately, we get old and have to leave the field and pass away. So it's one of those organizations that's not very active today.
So was it a nonprofit?
Yes, it was a nonprofit. In fact, they even got money from the Prince of Liechtenstein. So,
and during what period was that? Because was that during the abduction?
It was
phase?
During when the only thing you could talk about was Roswell or abductions. Yeah, so the 80s and the 90s. And I specifically said, I'm not going to do Roswell. There's plenty of people that are looking at Roswell. So I am going to do the 1947 flap without using Roswell. If I find something interesting, I will tell people, but I'm not a Roswell researcher.
And so what would make the Prince of Liechtenstein want to get involved with this? Was he an associate of Robert Bigelow?
I don't know if he was. He was specifically, he said, I cannot do anything that's going to affect another government. So he can do, okay, Aldrich, go to the Library of Congress and look at all the, look for Air Force stuff or the National Archives. He wouldn't do that. He would do things like abduction research because that was fine. That was not interfering in another country's business or sovereignty, because he's a sovereign himself.
Yes, there's quite an interesting history over there, and the banking industry, and to say the least.
He has a lot of claims on a lot of land in other countries, and of course, when the wall fell and the Soviets left Eastern Europe, it was more or less said, okay, you have these claims, that's fine, but we're not enforcing these former claims. But it's like everything else. History changes, and they might find out, one day he's the emperor of Central Europe.
Well, that would be definitely interesting. Let's maybe hope not. But and so this, when you received funding from FUFOR, wasn't Robert Bigelow also involved in giving funding?
Well, what they had is Bigelow organized the UFO Research Coalition, MUFON, FUFOR, and CUFOS, Center for UFO Studies. And he said, I'm going to give you a certain amount of money. You spend it the way you see fit. And so I was the first one to put in a proposal. And the other proposals they didn't like. So mine got approved. There are other proposals, like there was one that the lady was going to do all of McDonald's publications. She was going to do a bibliography. So she got approved. And then Bigelow said, well, I think I want control, so we're not going to do this anymore. But mine had already been approved and the money was available. So I went, and like I said, I thought I needed at least 3 years. And that was over almost 30 years ago. So
and that,
we're still at it.
I know. I mean, think of what has changed and what has not changed in the field of ufology. That's what is very interesting. It seems like we've got the same cast of characters that were around, towards the end of the 60s, Jacques Vallee. Then you get into the early 70s, you've got Putoff and Co. And then 30 years ago, Bigelow, and same types of people. So it's interesting.
I went down to the National Archives and I saw, Project Blue Book is there on microfilm. But then I looked at the thing and it says the 4602nd files. So I said, okay. So I thought that was part of the Project Blue Book stuff. So I called up the boxes and they brought them in. And this is stuff, in some cases, it was in Project Blue Book. And in other cases, it wasn't. So I started copying that stuff. Well, I'm supposed to be doing 1947 research. What's going on here? And then one of the archivists says, well, I see you're interested in UFOs. What about Foo Fighters? I could show you some files that we just put on the shelf. I said, yeah, I want to see those. So it's spread out as to what I'm doing. So if I go to an archives or a university, I try to suck it dry, but that's it. It's not working.
And so with everything that you've done over the years, all the information that you've collected, like what happens to that? Do you share it with a specific group of people? Do you share it with organizations? Where, and I know it's very interesting because there are lots of issues with privacy and copyright and and things like that. So how do you, when you first get information?
I have a website for one
right,
thing that
Project
people can
1947, right.
Yeah, project1947.com, because we were going to sell books on there. Lauren Gross is going to give me some of his books I'm going to sell, but that petered out. So what we're doing right now is this is a way of me communicating any things I find, and trying to do extensive research before I put things up, not just run-of-the-mill things. And of course, other people that have been involved in Project 1947 or our colleagues, they're welcome to put things on there. So the Project 1940 website is really the Keith Basterfield Research Society, because he does more than I do. He's dug so much stuff out of the Australian archives, and he continues to keep doing it. You say Australian archives is dry now. Then he comes back again, and here we are. Here's Papua New Guinea for, not just Father Gill, but military, radar, everything. I said, where's this guy keep going? Where's he getting this stuff? He's finding it all over the archives, which is what I try to do in the United States. So he's very generous with his research too, and other people.
And so who, over the years, over the decades, who have been your core group of people that you trust and work with and share information?
Well, Lauren Gross, Barry Greenwood. Lauren Gross is retreated out of the UFO field, but anybody that doesn't read his books, you're not really delving into ufology.
Can you give us some titles of his books?
Well, the main one is UFOs: A History, and then he changed the title, so it's a march from the beginning of the 20th century through the mid. Maybe you could say back to the airship era.
Right, and the Fifth Horseman, Vancouver guys on top of it.
And the reason is 1963, he was going to quit at 1959. He thought that was the end of the 50s, and he thought that was the big era of UFOs. And I told him, Lauren, the 50s didn't end until the Kennedy assassination. And he agreed. And so he said, okay, I'm going to go up to 1963. Barry Greenwood, of course, is a close archive colleague. John Stepkowski in Australia. And there's a large number of other people in South America and Europe and who contribute now and then or more often. So I'd like to mention Balestro Olmos in Spain. And what he is doing is keeping track of government released material. There are 45 governments. Some of them don't exist anymore, but there are 45 governments that have released material, including like the Southern Rhodesian and the East German Stasi went ahead and kept track of UFOs. Now that's kind of surprising to people, but once they broke into the archives after the wall fell, they found out that these guys were looking at UFOs. There's no pilot cases in their files. Doesn't mean they don't exist somewhere in the East German intelligence files, but there are close encounters in the East German files. So it's interesting. And in places like Fiji, well, there's official documents in Fiji. We haven't been able to dig them out yet, but some are in the news. Some of it is in the newspapers. So sightings in Fiji are not unknown, but we just haven't been able to find the official stuff.
Right. And I just want to jump in here really quickly because people have got some great questions in chat. And I want to just, while we're still here, let me just throw you off topic really quick. But I want to ask a question from Drew Williamson. And thanks, Drew, for being here. I'm glad that you could make it tonight. So in the 1968 book, Mysteries of the Skies, UFOs in Perspective by Lauren Denault, he specifically wants to know what your contribution was with that book.
I found out about that, when they were about halfway through. So I did research. I looked in newspapers. I had already a pretty good collection of pre-1947, before Kenneth Arnold collection. So I was able to give them some things. Drew is one of the stalwarts when we had our email list for Project 1947, and he would check things out for me, close in his local newspapers, things before Arnold again. So a good part of 1947 was before there was a name, flying saucers.
Right, so, and that's what Laura and Denault's book
right
absolutely touched on, and that was pretty groundbreaking. And I want to ask you another question: is it true that James McDonald authenticated the Heflin UFO photos?
No. In fact, he started to back away from them. The people in the East Coast, the West Coast there, they were pretty convinced. Ida Bell and Marilyn Epperson, Ann Druffel, right there.
I know, there she is.
Yeah,
Alice. I know you can see your mom on her shoulders, keeping track of us.
So they were pretty well convinced with this. McDonald was a little more skeptical, so he backed off a little bit, and he would answer questions for them, but he wasn't quite decided that maybe it wasn't. It needed more work.
And speaking of Alice, I can see her, and thank you, Marina, for the super sticker. Thank you very much. And I just want to say, nice to hear Jan about some of the early years of UFO research. Teams are going through the same process with the government involvement as 50 years ago. And I want to say that we do, Miss Gordon. I was talking to Alice the other day, and Gordon Lore left a very special imprint on both of us. And I think about Gordon every day and just his kindness. And I know that there are a lot of stories that man told Alice. He was very dear to me. So I will be very excited to get Gordon's work up here, as archive up here, to join Ann's archive and others that have been graciously donating to me to make this archive a very special place that I look forward to continuing for many, many years to come. So
yes, yeah. So Ann Druffel assembled a huge collection of UFO material, and it's just amazing. And we've been going through and scanning some of it as we're here, and also trying to make connections within the files. There's so much material here, and we're chattering away all day. Oh, look at this! And she found this in McDonald's files, and nobody knows about it. Yeah.
I mean, it's so much fun to have you here and then to look at the files and, you know, where as I pick up certain things, you pick up other things because you have the history with these people. And so, you know, just to sit back and listen to you talk about these people and things, it's just been a very fascinating adventure to have you here.
Yeah. I'd like to say I did communicate with Ann a little bit more than I remember, but
She's got those files.
yeah, she has. She did some things that were very important. One of the things was she wrote the Secretary of the Air Force and said, "What about service reports?" Now, the Air Force has been saying for 10 years, or more than 10 years, when she wrote the Air Force, "Oh, we destroy those. We don't keep them. There's no files on them." Liar, liar. So she wrote the Secretary of the Air Force about it and got a letter from the colonel in the Pentagon saying, yes, we have files of these things, which were a method of reporting UFOs after Project Blue Book was over. People don't realize how important that letter is. It's a key to opening official files. That's what it is. And every time I write Congress, I point that out. These things went on after Blue Book was closed. There's files that after Blue Book was closed. And it's not just that. They at least 5 years after Blue Book closed, they were still investigating just government reports, not reports from the public.
And I've got to just go, and we're going to jump back, and I want to talk a little bit. And hey, Amy, it's nice to see you.
What does Bill say there?
So let me go up. I'm going to ask these questions really quickly. So hang on. And yeah, anyway, yes, Alice, I just think the world of your mom, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that really quickly. So hang on one second. I want to go up and ask you what you think about Jacques Vallee and Paula Harris embracing the Trinity case, despite the troubling information that has come to light concerning the case.
It's sad. It's sad. I'm sorry. I mean, one of the most respected ufologists in the whole world, and this is really unfortunate. And I've been watching Douglas dig into this case, and
Douglas Dean Johnson.
Yeah, and it's I don't understand it. I don't. It's just beyond me.
But why? And I just want to ask this because, you know, we've got these figures in ufology that we hold to these almost godlike standards. Why is Jacques Vallee one of the most respected people in the history of the subject?
Well, right during in 1965, if you could imagine, ufology was, far less respectable than it's sort of become today. He wrote Anatomy of the Phenomena. It was already published in France, and that was a watershed book, and it was an advocate for scientific investigations and actually putting out reasons why UFOs should be scientifically evaluated, how they should be taken seriously, how they were taken more serious in Europe than they were in the United States, and a giant amount of UFO material that was of the most serious nature from Europe. And he continued that with Challenge to Science with his wife. And so, I mean, I read those 2 books and I was just amazed. I said, are people really saying these kind of things? Are they really advocating this? This man has done outstanding research here. And then now we have this. I'm sorry.
So let me ask you, and I've got all of his books sitting behind me and all over the studio, and when I got into this, I definitely held him to very high regard. As I've learned more about specific people and their associations and what they have and haven't done over the years, I have to ask the question: why is it that his core group of people are people like Hal Puthoff, Kit Green, the Skinwalker folks? What does that say, or should it say, about a person's credibility in the subject when you're keeping company with characters like this who purposefully promote information that is not factual decade after decade?
Well, once again, I don't associate with a lot of people in ufology. So I did have a rather close French colleague, Dominic Weinstein, and he's a counter-terrorist. We can tell that now. He's a counter-terrorist agent, and he was, you might say, in the French equivalent of the FBI. So, and we cooperated quite a bit. My interactions with Vallee are very, very small, but the ones with Weinstein were, very big. And we tried to get airline cases, EM cases involving airlines, close approaches. So with the French Space Agency, he worked and he had 300 close approaches, either, almost head-on collisions, buzzing aircraft, pacing them. So that was somebody I was working with. And there's other people, Renee Fournet. Oh God, I'm sorry. So
we've been at it for a long time. We've been,
yeah.
You're a trooper, I will say.
But a lot of the people I work with or assist them, it's all, quiet. I mean, so Brad Sparks did his 1700 reevaluation of Blue Book. So he's got 1700 possible unknowns in the Blue Book, not 701.
So why is it quiet? Because shouldn't this be, if we're really trying to move this to the next level?
I'm as big I got as big an ego as almost anybody around, but I don't feel like I like to let people know information. So I'm always posting. So that's probably, oh, that guy is always on the internet. What is wrong with him? Has he got some kind of a complex or something? But like I said, I helped Brad with that.
And where can you find Brad's material?
Well, right now, the latest one is on the Italian site. So the CUIS site. So if you wanted this unknown, and this is a lot of research. I mean, Brad just was on this for years and years and years. I mean, he read the cases, he went through them again. Why is this explanation worth anybody's salt? And so he came up with 1,700 cases, which, it's preliminary. We've investigated these things. And I talked about the 4602nd files. We looked at those. We compared what was in Blue Book. There's new stuff there. It changes the idea of what's in the case. The First Marine Air Wing in Korea during the Korean War, it changes some of the cases answers. It gives more information. So if you see Brad Sparks, you go to 1953 on my website, and there's a sighting there, and he had a big write-up in the Jerry Clark 3rd edition encyclopedia. And right after that, we found the First Marine Air Wing weekly intelligence briefings. And here's the same case with more information. So we rewrote it and we updated it on my site. I'm saying, this is amazing. It's even a better case than we thought it was.
Let me just read this really quickly from Vancouver Guy. The article Mellon just put out, Christopher Mellon, on the NORAD case is actually Brad Sparks' update article for the case for Jerry's upcoming 4th edition of the UFO Encyclopedia.
So NORAD, if you read the NORAD article by Brad Sparks, there was a scientist right at that time during the Condon Committee that told the Condon Committee, we've already picked up UFOs with satellites. So that's part of Brad's article. It's in there. There's a lot of other things in there. Condon asked NORAD if they could come out there and visit them. NORAD said, fine. They had a little visit. NORAD wrote Condon, thanks for coming out. Condon wrote back to NORAD, thanks for having us. And that was the end. So the material within NORAD is still there. And if you read Sparks' essay on this, it's full of UFO stuff that never made it to Blue Book. And there's another thing, the Vietnam War. There were all kinds of suspicious things running around the sky over there. So they had Project Cock Pistol, lethal chaser, and other things, and they had all kinds of instrumentation. And I try to point this out to congressmen and senators when I write them, and the actual the UFO Aero and NASA. There's 500 lethal chaser UFO cases, and they're all unknown, and they never made it to Blue Book.
And so let me ask you, because, we're going again in front of Congress with information about UFOs, UAP. What do you think Elizondo and Mellon are a positive thing, or do you think they have had a negative impact on what is taking place with potentially getting the subject to be taken seriously?
Well, Christopher Mellon was, of course, intelligence. He's Deputy Secretary for Intelligence. So he also worked on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate. So obviously he has his ideas and what he says have sway. And I think that's one of the reasons that we do have the congressional interest that we have today, because he knows a lot of these congressmen. I don't know.
But what about the facts?
I can't see the way that this is since the New York Times article. It's like everybody that was ever in ufology before 2017, they don't count.
Well, that would be thanks to Mellon and Elizondo.
We're the new guys, and we know everything. And you don't know everything. And let me tell you, after almost 60 years, I don't know anything.
But I mean, that's the clear message that Elizondo and Mellon and TTSA and people have put forward. They don't care about the history of the subject because, they
Right.
can do all their little data mine, whatever they're doing, and promote Mylar balloons and really, in my opinion, make the subject quite questionable. But so
Well, it's always good to have a background in history. And when I got into intelligence, that's one of the first things I was told. Study history. So that's what I did. And I got a degree in history. So, and I disagree absolutely with Elizondo on historical stuff. It's important. That's where you find out where you made the mistakes. And it seems like every time we start over in ufology, so Twining in July, over the 4th of July weekend in 1947, he started an interim program. People don't know. I'm always teaching history. I'm sorry. He decided we're going to start looking at UFOs on his own authority, not the Secretary of the Air Force, or at the time the commander of the Army Air Forces, because they hadn't split off from the Army yet. So he decided on his own authority, which he was authorized to start up a new project without any asking any permission. But of course, he did ask permission. The Army is a hierarchy, so you do ask the Chief of Staff, please, can I do this? But he started on his own. In September, that's September 47, that's where a big confluence. And everybody's holding up this thing that Twining wrote. He didn't, that's not his letter. He signed it. The staff, the best guys he had at Wright-Patterson had looked at UFOs, and they told him, this is what we find. And then the chief of intelligence at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base wrote the letter, and Twining signed it. Now, if you want a tutorial on how I know that, it will take a little while. But it's not the Twining memo. It's the corporate idea of the Air Materiel Commander. It's their opinion. It's not the general's opinion. The general didn't go in his office and write this up. The staff of his staff, which included 2 generals, considered this for a while. And then the chief of intelligence wrote it up, and Twining looked at it. He said, I agree. So I am signing this letter that the AMC, the corporate, this is a corporate opinion that UFOs deserve some kind of project. And that led to Project Sign, and then to Project Grudge, and then Blue Book. Let's repeat everything that happened under Project Sign. We're starting from scratch. We're going back and inventing the wheel. Condon, well, let's go back and start from scratch, from scratch again. And now what are we doing now? Same old thing, Arrow.
Well, yep.
Reinventing the wheel all the time.
But do you think, and I have to ask you this because I mean you've been in this for so long. I have talk to, because sometimes you get involved in this subject in a public sense, or you get into a social media group and things, and I've watched not only myself but other people get harassed and intimidated, and yet nobody in the UFO world or the old guard stands up for younger people that are being bullied in this subject. What do you think? Do you think that there is a responsibility for people in this subject that have the public ear to stand up for younger people or other people who are coming into this, who are being kind of whipped around? What do you think the responsibilities are for a researcher?
It should be mentors. The older people should be mentors, not, that's stupid. Why did you say that? Not that kind of thing. That's not what we need to find people that are have a little competence, and that's sadly lacking in a lot of ufology today. But the older guys, they shouldn't be beat their chest. I already knew that. But let the younger guys
and women.
Yeah. Everybody.
I know that there are a lot of men on the email list. Men,
that's
no women.
All right. Yeah, it seems to be a man type thing.
Why is that?
Men like things, and I think women are more interpersonal interactions with other people. I think they're more social. I think that's why. The women seem to be more interested in the abduction phenomenon. I don't know. I mean, Isabel Davis was my mentor. And I would say things to her, and she would keep her cool. And she'd say, no, this is what I think you're trying to say. And she had this, I remember this always. I know this case affected her tremendously. This woman had a close encounter in about 1966, and she had her baby in her baby carriage, and this thing approached her. And I saw the letter. She had me read it, and the ladies, it was almost illiterate, but I'm sorry, this kind of affects me.
I think this affects both of us.
Yeah. So Isabel says, read the letter. Not, okay, this person is not very literate. What is the first thing she did? Reached over the baby carriage to protect her child. And she says, that's the way you analyze UFO cases, not how intelligent your witness is. You don't get to choose the best witnesses, but sometimes the best witnesses are not the smartest ones.
And that is why, for me, and that's very touching, and thank you for sharing that. And that's why, for me, and I think, we all want to, when you have somebody who is reporting a sighting, or somebody who's going to a Facebook group and just being very honest about what they've experienced, and you have other people that are stepping in and promoting information that is false and does lead down a very detrimental path, when do we to step in to protect people that need that protection? What is our responsibility as public figures and researchers and archivists in this field to protect other people?
Well, see, it's not. There's nothing in ufology that's enforceable. It's not like it's an academic
But it could be, and it should be.
Academic type of there's any academic discipline in the field. You know, you can't discipline anybody. You can't say, okay, your grants are cut off, or your tenure is questionable. So the only way I think we can do this is some of the people that have been around a while have to lead by example. It's not how many times you've been to a conference. It's how good your information is.
And so leading by, by example, what does that mean? Does that mean how do you
do the best you can on your investigations? Try to show other people how to investigate. That's really it. It's on Facebook you see this all the time. There's a light in the sky, and all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of people say, oh, isn't that amazing? That's amazing. Oh, it's wonderful. It's such a great picture. There's no information about the picture, what kind of camera was used, where the person was, which direction they shot the picture in. One is a Burger King sign that's out of focus, and all this guy's friends are on there. Oh, that's just the best UFO picture I've ever seen. Why, you piece of junk.
But I mean, I will say that when I first got into this, I mean, I looked at a light over the Ochre Mountains, and I said to myself, well, what is that? This is in the flight path for an international airport, yada, yada, yada. I wanted to know. And so I did everything in my power to educate myself. And back then, as I was going, kind of climbing up through the ranks of, people that I still apparently have to prove myself to, unknown. I'm not quite sure why, but, as you climb up, and you educate yourselves, and I read everything about aviation, I read everything about astronomy, I read everything about, A, B, C, and D. And so I would have, appreciated somebody back then just to say, hey, great, this might not be what you think it is, but I'm going to give you the tools to learn about all of these things. That's what MUFON should have been about, and they never were and never are going to be. That's what people that are supposed to be mentoring people need to kind of say. And I understand that it gets frustrating because there are people, or there's so much going on on the internet now. You never know who you're dealing with. But I mean, that is important to have patience, and to make people, it's like, okay, great, you're not seeing a UFO, but that is so cool that you got out and you looked up at the night sky and you want to learn more, and I'm going to empower you to do what you need to do to keep looking up. And I think that, that's what I feel, we need to empower people to do that. And I definitely, I mean, it's a hard experience when that doesn't happen.
Well, seeing Venus through the trees, at dusk or close to dawn, at about first light, and if you're riding along in a car, that's weird. It's weird. So, whenever I see something like that, I try to get at a different vantage point to look at it. So that's what I'd recommend. That's just a simple thing for somebody new. You're not seeing an interplanetary spaceship. I'm sorry. Look at it from different angles. Try to find out more information about, did somebody else see it? Where did they see it from? So a lot of our sightings are just one person, and they can't do what I just said. So, but the best cases are the ones where you can actually do that kind of thing. The Minot case is outstanding. Well, nobody in ufology wants to touch it, and the skeptics are deathly afraid of it. They won't even, you say, what about this? There's no physical evidence. What is a radar picture? This radar picture has been looked at by 4 experts on radar. They all say the same thing. How is that? So, no, we're going to talk about some light in the sky. If you go back to NICAP, if you go back to UFO evidence, there are very few cases that are lights.
Well, what about the
they're
Hessdalen phenomena?
Solid objects.
What about the Hessdalen phenomena?
Well, that's it. Now, I'm interested in all kinds of aerial phenomena. Yes.
So why should we discount?
I'm not saying it should be discounted. I'm saying the lights in the sky are like, just like if it could be Venus, maybe
Right.
It is, and maybe you should put that in your. It's not a great case, until if you could find out more, that's great. Say somebody at the Prairie Meteor project took a picture of it, and it wasn't Venus because it's going through the sky, and they got a picture on their camera. Then that would be, something to say, hey, this is more substantial. But we seem to disregard the most substantial cases in favor of really a lot of silliness in some cases, but some of the really weak cases, and constantly talking about the weak ones over and over and over again. They keep appearing on Facebook. And I said, I understand that the Minot case is very complex, but it's got a lot of backup, scientific backup. And everybody, all these people keep saying, well, there's not enough information. There's more than enough information here. I'm sorry, you don't want to look at it, but it's there.
Right. So that would be in answer to Stephen Padilla's question. You've just mentioned your favorite case in your opinion, and now I want to transition because, and I appreciate your talking about all of this, but I want to transition into what you discovered this week with Ann Druffel's files. And if people don't understand the importance of Ann Druffel, then I would definitely say you need to be schooled. She was a very strong, incredible woman who, when you look at the breadth and depth of her work back there, almost 150,000 documents, research that is a lot of that you've never seen before, and it's incredibly important. And I want to just say she was an amazing human being and researcher. So I'm very proud to be a woman and have her work.
Firestorm. This is her book. It's a historical biography of James McDonald and his place in ufology. Now, I have difficulties with certain parts of this, but it's an outstanding thing, and this is an example for young people. This is how you do this. Everybody she wrote about in this book, and there's all kinds of characters coming in and out all the time. She sent them what she wrote and said, is this correct? She interviewed people, hundreds, not a couple, hundreds. And she gave them a chance to if they had some kind of change in their story, she gave them a chance to do that. That's the way scientific and historical documents should be written.
Absolutely.
She did peer review. We always talk about peer review in ufology. I know very, very, very few people that do peer review, and Richard Hall was one of them. And he asked me to do a peer review on his airships to Arnold, and so I was able to give him a few more cases. And I was able to give him details of a few cases he had in there, and so that is seldom done in ufology. And there's a lot of help that's needed for people that are writing in ufology. There's a lot of people with knowledge or that know where to find things. And so I get told some things every once in a while. I say, what about this incident? It may be a UFO case, or it may be some kind of incident in history, and I don't know anything about it, and I just have to say, I don't know, I'm going to have to look. And sometimes I may be able to find something about it, and sometimes I may not be able to find anything. And here's one thing that we found this today. July 5th, 1966. This is writing about U.S. Air Force shakeup. McDonald went out to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he visited Project Blue Book. And General Crenshaw, who was in charge of AMC, asked him to come up and talk to him about it. So he went and saw the general. And Quintanilla went with him, and Quintanilla was told to stay outside, and the general just wanted to talk to McDonald. So McDonald generally, as he said, I told the general that this is going to get you in trouble because it's a real bad. There's nothing scientific about what Blue Book is doing. And then when he came out, Quintanilla said, the general never keeps somebody in there more than 30 minutes in his office. He said you were in there 40 minutes. So the next time McDonald, now I didn't know this is a new discovery for me, and Ann had it in her files. General Crenshaw put 3 senior officers into Project Blue Book. DeGoers was one, outstanding, competent scientist. And these guys were there for about 6 months. And McDonald said these guys were actually working on this problem. But then General Crenshaw moved on. So this went away. Now, I didn't know about this 6-month reform of Project Blue Book. And when I told her about it, I said, I am just amazed. This is amazing. And I didn't know anything about it. And I don't think most other people in ufology knew that this happened.
Thank you, Ann Druffel. And it's exciting to have you go through these and see how important her body of work is. And so, yes. So
this is from the guys for the people on the East Coast, or the West Coast, I'm sorry. This is the Los Angeles NICAP subcommittee meeting of that. So Leslie Keyborn is one of the top scientists in the study of physics, and he's confirming some story that I always tell, and everybody accuses me of making it up. So take this. So in the 1960, from 1960 to about the middle of 61, maybe 62, they were NICAP was trying to get congressional hearings. Now, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but if there ever was a conspiracy, this is it. So Kehoe was to get hearings. The Air Force was doing everything they could to avoid hearing. They activated Hynek and Colonel Friend to make sure that everything NICAP was saying was that they answered it and debunked it. And one of the things is very suspicious. Major Kehoe, and there's an Army intelligence officer named Major Aho, who was also retired at the time. And he was involved in some really shady dealings, but he was running around the halls of Congress. And Keyboard's got this story, and it confirms what I had been saying, that Aho was running around trying to make sure that there weren't any hearings with his silliness. Now, I don't know if the Air Force put him up to it or the government put him up to it, but later on, he was involved in the Otis T. Carr UFO that was going to fly to the moon, and people lost about $250,000 in this venture. Does that sound like something we had today? We were going to get a spaceship today? If you put money into this corporation, okay, well.
I can think of several examples of that in present day.
So Otis T. Carr went to jail for fraud. He served every minute of his sentence. He didn't get any time off. Aho was involved in this fraud. He walked. That's very interesting. How did this guy get away? And this other guy's in jail. And this is the guy that's trying to derail hearings. Although he says, I'm responsible for having UFO hearings. And of course, his little presentations to Congress were, quite silly. So that he kind of derailed that. And the other side is if you go to Project Bulwark, you can find this if you look in Project Bulwark. This is something people hadn't looked for. Some people have. Admiral Hillenkotter had been the head of the CIA. He was a friend of Kehoe. He was on the NICAP board, and he had made statements about the Air Force's handling of UFOs. And if you know about who Hillenkotter was in the UFO history, which most people don't realize who he was, the Air Force was very upset with him being there, because he gave a lot of credence to NICAP's idea that there should be congressional hearings. So in Project Bulwark, you find a thing that says, we have to do something about Hillenkotter. See if we can get him to leave or resign, which is what he did. He's probably approached by somebody. Kehoe, it was out of the blue that he resigned. There was he didn't understand why he resigned.
And so what do you think of, because I want to ask you this, when you start hearing, and I know Gordon has talked about this before, about Kehoe being racist and not wanting to work with people that were not white. So can you address some of that? Because I think that is very fascinating, and I think that's an important part of the history of the subject and the people that are involved.
It's just terrible. And it was going on while I was down there. I went down there to meet James McDonald. He came to Washington for a strategy with NICAP. Keel. John Keel was her boyfriend. And I met her, and
Lynn
I
Cato.
was so impressed by Lynn Cato, and she was so funny and effervescent. But she was part Indian and she was part black, and she was actually a Quartrain. So her mother and father were pure. Her mother was Indian. Her father was black. He worked for the NSA. But that's not what mattered. It was what she was doing intellectually at the Library of Congress. She was doing a biography of all the UFO publications.
It's Lynn Cato.
Yes.
Because the Earth answered it. So, or asked that question.
Well, okay. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah. The thing is that she was there as part of the strategy at NICAP. McDonald put in his notes, Jan Aldrich hovering around in the background trying to listen and hear everything that's going on.
He said that about you?
Yeah, in his notes.
Oh, snap.
Well, I wasn't part of the strategy session. I just went in, Lynn and I had been talking, and one of the NICAP clerks, one of the NOP girls, we had been talking, and they said, it's time. So we went in there. Major Kehoe wasn't there at this meeting, but we went in there. I didn't know it was a strategy meeting. I just went in there to hear what was going on, but it was a strategy meeting. And turns out now I'm learning this years afterwards, 20 decades afterwards. The strategies, what are we going to do? It looks like the Condon report is going to be negative. And Lynn was one of the people that was being consulted. So, and the NICAP staff wanted her, after she finished her bibliography, to come and work there. And Gordon mentioned something about hiring Lynn Cato, and Gordon said, I was afraid he was going to turn purple. He said, I'm not having any black people working here. Isabel Davis. I'm finding this out. This is stuff I just found out. Isabel Davis, she's an old woman. She walked all the way to Lynn Cato's house and apologized to Lynn. And so Lynn, she became girlfriend with John Keel. Smartest thing John Keel ever did. She was cut to the quick by this. This was terrible. And it's something that I've discovered, and it lowers my respect for Major Kehoe. I had a lot of problems with Kehoe before this, but nothing like this. I feel that you don't know who you. When I was in the military, I said, you don't know who you're standing next to. You may be standing next to a Medal of Honor winner, and they may be sort of a screw up right now, but when it comes to battle, you don't know. So everybody, you need to treat everybody the way they should be treated. And I think that was Kehoe doing that to especially telling the staff that he wasn't going to have any person like that. This is a highly intelligent, highly educated woman in she had degrees in the United States and degrees in France. She's been to the Sorbonne, and that's outrageous.
Sounds a lot like Robert Bigelow. You can find that information online if you do your digging. But yeah, that is unfortunate, and I'm sure for you who's been in this topic for 60 years to make discoveries like that about your people that you held in high regard, that has got to be, it does take you back a little bit. And that's the one thing I've learned about this subject is the people that I've held in high regard often fall the farthest when you learn more information out about them or you see the way that they behave in private or publicly. So that is an interesting aspect of this subject for sure.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about what else we found in the McDonald files, because we did find some very interesting things that have not seen the light of day. And I will be looking forward to talking to Alice about that and then putting something forward about that very soon.
Oh, so he when McDonald when he had gone to Blue Book for the first time, the second after that he went to see Hynek, and it was not a pleasant meeting for Dr. Hynek. Of course, this is fairly well known, but it's some of the things that McDonald pointed out to Hynek that he had done, and Hynek tried to defend himself, and McDonald said, "Oh, yeah, you did this. Well, that makes it even worse." So, Hynek said that the Robertson panel was not the turning point in ufology or in official ufology. He said Project Grudge Report was. And so McDonald looked him in the eye and said, "And guess who put all those silly answers in the Project Grudge Report, Dr. Hynek?" And so that's really interesting. That's something I knew that McDonald had no regard for the Project Grudge Report and Hynek's involvement there. But it's interesting to know that when Hynek said, "Well, Robertson was not the turning point, Grudge," and Hynek volunteered that Grudge was, and McDonald said, "Well, that makes it even worse for you, mister." So that was just amazing. There were so many things that McDonald and Hynek and Vallee were at odds with each other about, that they had trouble cooperating. And it wasn't until after Condon that McDonald and Hynek had to reproach.
I know who I put my money on in that circle.
Well, they agreed to try to get government funding for UFOs, together as partners. So there's Ann's files are full of Skynet cases.
Right, and she was the founder of Skynet.
And a lot of these cases hadn't seen the light of day, and I don't think some of them were post NICAP, so they're not in the NICAP files. But there's others, and they're just, I said, I don't know about this case. I've never seen it before. And okay, so who are you? Well, Barry Greenwood and I have been scanning the CUFOS NICAP files for several years now, And it's down to everything is scanned except for 1971 to 1977. So we are very familiar with the files. Not every case, but she has some very good cases in the Skynet. And once again, they're well investigated, and those things need to see the light of day. They need to be where people can find them.
I think they are.
Well, they are. They're going to be, for sure.
Yes, I think they're in very good hands.
Yeah, so we looked at those. I want to tell you about Brad Sparks' IFF, identification, friend or foe. Now, this is how the military, listen out there, listen up, Mike West. I'm going to tell you how this works. There's not just a bunch of aircraft out there flying around. They have signals that are encrypted that tell each other who they are and where they are. So we started, Brad, I sent him a number of these cases. He realized from the very beginning that these are very significant. An aircraft will, or a ground station will broadcast a challenge. There's a machine that encrypts the answer, and every day it changes, and probably every time it's challenged, the answer changes, but it's encrypted. It's not, hi, are you an American? No, I'm a Soviet. I'm coming after you. No, it doesn't work. So this is how during an air battle or ground, on the ground, people recognize aircraft, whether they should be engaged or not. Going back to 1951, UFOs are answering challenges like they have classified equipment in their thing. So I said, smart ass. I said to Brad, well, that means they're U.S. government material. And he says, yeah, and they're performing way beyond any possible the performance is way beyond at the time. 1951, you don't have aircraft going at 1,300 miles an hour. And that's in Ruppelt's book. But he didn't tell the his audience that this thing had been challenged by the Larson Air Force Base in Washington, and that it had given back the right answer. So that's one of them. So we're going through McDonald's material here, and here's one in 1966. McDonald.
Can you grab some water? I know it's...
No, sorry.
Okay.
McDonald more or less was puzzled by this. I mean, he knew what it meant, but he hadn't been looking for these kind of cases. It hadn't been till Brad started collecting them, and that's another place where I tried to help him. I'm not doing this; he's doing it. I'm just helping him collect it. Lauren Gross, he wrote the books. I gave him my opinions. We argued about things. I gave him access to everything I had. So did Greenwood. But we didn't, make a big deal about it. That's what I meant when I said I kind of hang around in the background. This IFF thing is Brad is really, he's studying hard on this, and we found a number of cases. But Ruppel in 1951, he didn't understand digital communications. Nobody did. Remember the old thing where you used to dial up and you got the bang?
No.
That's, you don't, huh? Okay, you're trying to say you're not that old.
I know. My acting skills are clearly excellent.
So Ruppel couldn't understand that's communications. You don't need, you just need a burst. And here you've got the battle plans for the whole, next week or two. And so one person's interference might be another person's communications. And that's what some of these things sound like. They're broadcasting UFOs. I said, Brett, we have to get every one of these cases because maybe. And now when Arrow was up before Congress, when Kilpatrick was up there, he mentioned something about Signet like that. And that's what we're interested in. We're interested in this too. And we think some places where, it's just interfering with the radio. No, it's sending actual information, but we don't have the capacity to recognize it. But it's also answering our inquiries as to, who are you? Well, I'm an American aircraft. Sure you are. And you're going 1,300 miles an hour or 5,000 miles an hour? Sure you are. Now, once you get to SR 71, well, maybe you are. But stuff is at the near to the surface running like this, that's different. That's different.
Yeah, this is incredible. And as we both know, we made a discovery in the files about McDonald, about his daughter, about her thesis, which has never been published. And so that will be very interesting. I will be working on a little story with regard to that with my partner, Jack Brewer, at Expanding Frontiers Research, which should be great. And I look forward to hopefully eventually sharing that with people. And I also want to note that, we talk a lot about the conspiracy theories related to Dr. McDonald's death. And it is very clear in reading some of the files that Ann diligently collected, the interviews with Betsy and different people in Dr. McDonald's life, that he truly was very depressed. There is no conspiracy about the way that he passed away. And I think that we need to address that. Jan and I were talking a little bit about that and how people tend to say, this person was studying UFOs and so they mysteriously died, when that actually wasn't the case. It was very interesting, and I want to throw this in because I see Jan Harzan's name popping up in the chat. But it was very interesting when Jan Harzan was arrested in an underage, soliciting an underage minor in a sting, how the people that were working with him said that he was being set up and this was a conspiracy theory. And so I think it's very important to make sure that we set the record straight with regard to some of these things. Dr. McDonald was under a great deal of stress, not only because he had the courage to step forward about certain environmental issues, but he also was dealing with very personal things that took place with regard to his family, specifically his daughter, that were very difficult for somebody to deal with. And again, I would like to, Ann talks a little bit about this in her book, and I will be addressing that more. And I want to ask you, Jan, because these stories are so important. When you have information, when you have files like this, and files are getting pushed into one place, and you have a group of people that are looking for UFO cases, and they're not necessarily looking at the way women have been treated in the subject, about personal experiences from with family members and things, you have the tendency to potentially cherry pick data which isn't in the best interest of archiving and preserving history. So when you are getting information and potentially putting this information into one place, what are going to be the guidelines for putting forward information, and will you be following the ethical guidelines set forward by so many archivists and national organizations?
The thing with McDonald was, obviously we knew he was professionally under pressure because Congress is ridiculing him about some of his environmental concerns. And he was falling behind in his professional work, and people said he's spending too much time on UFOs. And then he's got his family problems, which were more than his one daughter and one son. And he's having his family torn apart too. So that was it's just a combination. This guy is being hounded to the absolute end of his rope. And he did something he decided to commit suicide, and it was not a spur of the moment plan. He had contingencies if it didn't work. He had a second backup plan, and he blinded himself in his first attempt. But then, even blind, he was able to go and execute his second part of the plan and commit suicide. So he's a great intellect, and it's unfortunate he is having mental problems and family problems and professional problems. My God.
Very, very tragic. Brilliant man. Again, it's been fascinating to have you here with me to go through these files as compared to going through them, by myself most days. So this is really interesting. But I want to know, with regard to, creating archives, creating places where people can learn, and have you noticed historically that there is a need to cherry pick information to put forward to the public in order to create a story about UFOs? Like with Hynek, there were some very interesting things about his personal life, but it would appear that people in specific organizations that were supporting the idea of UFOs maybe cherry picked information about Hynek in order to promote UFOs. Why do you think that is a problem? And if we are going to have archives, don't we have a responsibility to be transparent with information, no matter what that says, good, bad, or ugly? Because the person investigating things, oftentimes, especially in the UFO world, as we know, they have a tendency to promote things based on their belief systems. And so how important is that, say, with the project in New Mexico, when everybody's trying to amass all the information and put it in one location in North America? How important is that for there to be transparency? And not only that, but to make sure that it's not just UFO information that is being put forward.
So everybody has, nobody is without sin, though. So we can't throw the first stone.
I am the first person to admit that.
Yeah. And I
also don't have.
I have stuff in my background that I wouldn't like to get out. But I never met Dr. Hynek, but when we went down to Willie Smith, I got a pretty good briefing about some of Hynek's problems in his lifetime. And Willie Smith, he told me these things, and then he told me, well, Hynek was probably, or McDonald was probably killed. And I said, well, if you know the whole story, you might not think so. So we sat down and talked about it, and Willie said, well, I don't believe it was a gang of killers that killed him, on behest of the government now. He said, I didn't have the right information. So that's, and like I said, I had no idea about what was going on with Hynek. I don't think it had any much effect on his professional life. But he had some problems in his personal life.
Right. And, and absolutely, I'm the first one, if you listen to my show, I am the first one to be very open about some of the things that I have gone through, because that's a teaching experience. Yes, nobody is without sin. But when you potentially whitewash a person in the subject because you're trying to promote something, at what point does that become a problem? And how can we avoid doing that? We're trying to step forward and create integrity in the subject. So how do we do that? How do we engage the scientific community? How do we encourage women and younger people to get in the subject? And, I think these are all important questions. And most of all, like, I would love to know, what is happening with, I know that you and I have talked a lot about, and as I have with Barry, the push to get information into one location in Northern America. And for me, as I've had Smiles Lewis on the show, who has a great archive in Austin, and other people around the country, at what point do we work cohesively with other archives, or at what point do we try to get all the information and put it into one place where a handful of people have the control over that information?
Well, we're not trying to do that.
Okay, what's going on there?
We're trying to disseminate information, not we're trying to make information available worldwide. So the whole idea of the scanning project is, it doesn't just exist in somebody's old archive that's been in somebody's basement for almost 20 years. It's on a hard drive or a flash drive, and it can be exported around the world. We've already started some of this. The whole idea of scanning everything is to make it available in Australia, South America, Africa, Asia, Europe. That's the idea. Now, as far as the paper, that doesn't mean afterwards we fire up the paper and put it in the furnace. The idea is to disseminate the material. So all these ignorant people that say there's nothing to this subject, they have, wherever they are in the world, they have access to a huge amount of information.
And who's deciding what information is being put forward? Do you have like a committee? Is this, you're just putting forward
you just seen
UFO?
You just seen what it is. It's omnivorous. We're eating everything. It's a herd of Tyrannosaurus Rex going through the files, scanning everything. And the idea is, we're not going to make decisions like, well, this is foolishness. The contactees, we're not going to pay attention to them. Well,
but that's
we have to make, because they're part of the story. So, and there's people that are going to want to study their part in this story. We're not going to hold it in one place. We're gonna disseminate this as much as we can. Now,
I thought that the plan was to get everything to New Mexico.
for preservation, yeah, I'll get all the papers there, but we want to scan all the papers.
So what does that do to people like Smiles Lewis and other people like myself who have spent, a
Well,
decade?
we hope that everybody will scan their own stuff and incorporate it into this one big giant digital file. And this is the one thing that I love about this digital file, because we're doing it by date. Now that doesn't, other people take their information and they may store it by location, or there may be other things they say, well, I just want sightings by date, and historical items are, I want them in a different method of putting them together. I think if you have historical things that are going on in ufology and the case files, it should be by date. But that's my idea. I mean, I'm not trying to dictate to people how somebody else may want to do it differently. I just want to make the information available to everybody, and it's all over the place. It's where we can get it in a digital thing, and people can contribute. And I'm sorry that not very many people are interested in contributing. They're more interested in pontificating.
Well, I know that I'm certainly interested in contributing, and
yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the best amount of info, or the biggest amount of information around where everybody can see it. And the paper is, yes, we want to preserve the paper. And we have the University of New Mexico, which is the ultimate inheritors. And they claim that, and the Silence Group Cat is here now, so he's going to make
here because he is going to make
sure that we stop talking about security matters. So I've exchanged material with Keith Basterfield. We're a number of other people we've exchanged material with. The idea is not to get a mountain of material that's in one place and then maybe goes into storage for 20 or 30 years. The idea is to get material circulating around the world where everybody has an access to it. If they want to come and see the actual paper, there's a place for that.
It's called Salt Lake City. And so, and then I want to ask this because, as somebody who's been, very vested in this, like I know Smiles Lewis and other people, Mufasa, in the subject, when it's said that all the papers going to New Mexico, to me, that really, it takes the wind out of my sails. And I find that very, not very respectful of the work that I've done.
You've been very generous in sharing.
Yes.
There's no question. And I love to read paper. I hate to read computer stuff, but we've made that as sort of, that's the best way we can share large amounts of data without having to travel, to Sweden or Chicago or.
But isn't
the Canadian material, the Canadian government material is going to the University of Manitoba.
So why shouldn't there be different places across the country?
There
Obviously,
should be.
so why is it all going to Mexico? And what I'm, for me as somebody
Well,
who has created a
I'm not
place.
going around the country holding people up. I think McDonald's files, if they exist anymore any place else than the University of Arizona, I want to see anything that he had. And there's stuff that was, was out, let's say, at the time he died. So there it is in more places. And there's official discussions of McDonald. The Canadian material all went through Chris Rakowski. And now it's at the University of Manitoba. And they have agreed to scan it just like we're doing. So that's one center. You're one center. Albuquerque will be one center. I'm sorry that the Brits seem to have given up their material to Sweden, but that's Europe. That's one center in Europe. The Italians, they're 10 years ahead of us. Anything we do, they've already done and better. So their thing from the very beginning, when digital technology came on, they all bought the same kind of equipment that was compatible. Everybody was assigned in their area to collect all the UFO information they could and send it electronically to a central point in Italy. Americans ufology climb up the mountaintop, and there's a 10-year-old Italian flag on the mountaintop. We're way behind, and we can't cooperate like the Italians. We're at each other's throat.
I can see why. Well, I mean, if there's no transparency and there's no attempt to communicate, and for other people, to have a place in Utah where people can come and be educated about the topic is incredibly critical, just as there is in Austin.
I'm not saying that the material should be at Albuquerque. I'm just saying I am for a worldwide collection of material digitally. That's my mission. And I don't have many years, so somebody else is going to have to pick that up.
I think we're trying. I know I certainly am.
So what happens to the paper is it's becoming non-important. But I'm like everybody else. I like to see paper. And I like to see, I don't like to see it, for years. In fact, if you look on my site, I talk about Kehoe and things that were lost because of things that happened. I haven't finished. I'm just talking about, Kehoe had a perfect memory or identical memory, so he didn't feel like he needed to keep things. He gave them to the editors of True, who threw them out in the middle of 1950s. So not very much survives from Kehoe. The things he wrote about survive. But the actual paper, it was disappointingly, there's a disappointing amount of it when Ted Blocher told Kehoe, after harassing him for years and years and years, bring in your materials so I can copy it. And then, if you remember, Kehoe had what he called hidden cases or confidential cases where people were on active duty or in professional organizations and couldn't afford their reputation to be. So he kept them in his possession, and God knows what happened to them. So I have, if you go to my site, the latest
Project 1947.
Yeah, 1947. Go to what's new. And there's a 2-part article, and it'll soon be a 3-part article.
And that is absolutely great. You've done some really, I'm so impressed with that. And I want to ask, because we're running out of time, somebody in chat mentioned copyright and privacy issues. When I spoke with one of the former archivists, or the head of the archive at the University of Utah, he said that when you assume a collection, that it's understood that you should be transparent with that collection. Do you have any, when you're dealing with collecting archives from people, do you have any contracts that you sign with them, and what are the policies for obtaining funding and transparency with funding?
Well, we're self-funding right now. So Antonio Huenis gave Dave Mahler a large amount of sighting files, and Antonio had been all around the world. So people gave him books, local in South America, China. They gave him books and case files and things like that. And he obtained magazine articles and things like that. So he gave a lot of the case files to Mahler, and Mahler incorporated them into the National UFO Information Center, which is in its infancy. It's just starting. So then Antonio said he wanted to, get the rest of his files and so out of here. So we those were purchased. He needed money, so this is from almost every language and every ethnicity that this files come from.
Right. And so since this is a nonprofit, this should be available publicly.
It is going to be available publicly, but it's not important to be available publicly. It's not important because it's going to be on digital.
No, but I think when you've got a nonprofit, funding for that nonprofit is essential for transparency. So
you can go there, but who cares? Who wants to go to Albuquerque, New Mexico, or Chicago, Illinois? And I really don't like to go to Washington, D.C., but I have to, or to Maxwell Air Force Base. I want this stuff so that I can walk around. I don't have a giant number of filing cabinets. So let me tell you, my house is full of UFOs from the floor to the ceiling, and about 5 rooms are just completely UFO stuff. I am very happy to get rid of it, as long as it's available to everybody in a digital manner.
Mufasa is being naughty tonight.
No, he's part of the silence group. I know he is.
I know he is. He is Mr. MIB. And so, as far as the nonprofit and establishing things and addressing funding, we know nonprofits have to be transparent about their funding, and it's also I know that everybody pays a lot of money out of their own pocket to get things started. I know I certainly have for Expanding Frontiers research, but what with the copyright issue and things I've heard, for many, many years, copyright and then privacy, and I've heard people, about, well, I mean, whoever they are, hiding behind screen names, but they sweep up information, and then they're kind of talking a lot about privacy issues. And so can you explain to us what the privacy issues are, what the date is for cutoff, and why, if you've got organizations like MUFON that say you're signing over your data, why wouldn't that information be available to the public with regard to sightings reports and things?
Well, most sighting reports say on them, if it's NICAP or CUFOS or other organizations around the world, do you want to be confidential? So you have something you can check. I think that takes care of the privacy. And as far as I know, of all the UFO books that have ever been written, I had anybody stand up and say, you shouldn't have done that, because you give the people an option at the very beginning when you fill out a report form.
Right. As this MUFON, you're signing your
now, the
privacy.
European Union says that everything, they're trying to limit privacy actions up to 1970 and after. They want more stringent privacy. But if somebody says, okay, you can use my name, they've done that. And I don't know very many incidents where this has been a problem. Now, copyright is a problem.
But so let's get back to the privacy thing, though. So why haven't case files been put forward publicly? We obviously know that many of the people that were involved, some of the people involved with CUFOS and the Fund for UFO Research and things are involved in MUFON, and we know what happened to the data there. It was obviously bought and sold to the highest bidder, including personal medical information that's definitely quite special, and I'm sure a violation to HIPAA at somewhere along the line. So with privacy, what is the holdup with putting information forward? Because I've heard for years, it's privacy. Well,
once again, the person that is involved with the data, I mean, the citer, the observer, if he fills out a form, if he comes by and gives his private, waives his privacy, that's, to me, that's fine.
So don't we have the tools to redact? Haven't people
Yeah, you have a chance to redact.
So why
guy says he doesn't want to know his information, so you cross it out.
I mean, how?
And if by chance information that should have been kept private gets published, you take it down.
But that's not happening. I mean, we're still arguing about, we've got to go back to what is it that Isaac Coy says about going back to 19 blah blah blah.
It's the European Union says there's a more strenuous privacy constraints after 1970. In America, they kind of say that too. At the archives, the National Archives gave Mahler access to some of the Air Force OSI files, and the names of the witnesses were in there because they said these guys are either so old or they're dead. And so privacy supposedly ends with your death. But there's a lot of people that want to, say it's beyond that. Well, I don't want my father's reputation or whatever. When I went to the American Philosophical Library, I had to sign a thing that said they claim copyright on everything. And so if I want to use their material, I have to contact them. So after 3 or 4 times contacting them, and I didn't use a lot of material, but when I did, I let them know. And finally, the woman told me, she said, you know what? We see what you have done. Use your own discretion. You don't need to talk to us anymore. Now, McDonald, the University of Arizona, claims everything McDonald ever did. Like if he sent me a letter, that's copyrighted. I am not going to honor that. So when he sent it to me.
So when I went up, I feel the same way. But when I went up to the University of Utah Special Archives up there, where they hold Dr. Frank Salisbury's work, I mean, nothing was redacted. We have obviously seen a lot of
Well,
UFO.
that's the people that gave the material to the archives. Haynes is it's open all material that's at the University of Wyoming or at Rice University is open to the public. Haynes, that was part of his gift. But you still put on the material that you copy. This is copyrighted by the University of Wyoming.
So with all I mean, I've got, papers back from the late 60s of collecting data and mining data and doing all sorts of fun stuff. Hello, Mufasa, come over here, my little spy. But what we have the capability, we've got the technology. The information has been available to certain groups of people behind the scenes for a long time. Why haven't these things been redacted? And do you think that there are specific organizations or people in the subject that are hoarding data? And
everybody's hoarding data. And mostly if I talk to Canadian meteor tracers, and he says, you want to see our data? It's in the it's in the landfills. Our data is in the landfills because people die and they make no arrangements for what's going to happen to their data.
Right, and so
their stuff goes in.
So what arrangements have
Steve Putnam, he died. Barry Greenwood and some friends called his wife, and she said, come over and pick it up. Before they got there, she had thrown every bit of it into the dumpster and had it hauled away.
And so what preparations have you made, or have the archivists that have done all of this work for so long made? I know for me, specifically with the Druffel family, I have a contract with them, and when we do acquire other people's research, we do have contracts for them to sign, so things are very clear and everybody has a good understanding, and that seems to be the common practice. What does that look like
as I scan my own files, I send them to Albuquerque. So and when I go on research trips like this one, so when I was up at the University of Wyoming, I could use their scanning equipment up there. And so, some things you want paper. So, but as I got through with that went to Albuquerque. So anything I scan, I send to Albuquerque. Then I regret it. I said, boy, I wish I could look at that again. But yeah, that's my idea. I'm trying to slowly get out of the whole UFO files. I'm trying to get them to someplace else. I want to get them there before, they're before I die. So I don't want to have all these transfers of post after my death. I want it down there. Now it may not be. I'm sure it won't be completely integrated for a while, but that's with anything. The University of Manitoba, they not only get all the Canadian government stuff, and they never stopped collecting. And it's not like the United States Air Force. They okay, we're through, and we're not going to take anything new. But the Defense Department did continue collecting UFO reports. And if you look on my site, you will find that the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Information said yes. And a lot of it is we continue collecting material. We don't investigate. but it's at the National Military Command Center, which we found a bunch there. And I know there's a lot more there. And I try to tell Congressman, this is where some of it is in after the post Blue Book years to the resurrection of UFO investigations. And I told the government where they could get intervening material. Rice University, the University of Wyoming, the University of Arizona. There's a whole bunch of places they can get information.
But that doesn't mean
nobody's gone there yet.
But, I mean, here's the thing. Let's just say that the Rice University, just because a university has information or files from people, that doesn't make it credible or legitimate. And I think,
well, their thing is not Rice University, especially. It's the archives of the impossible,
right?
So they don't guarantee the accuracy of it, and
they should put that front and center.
It is front and center. When you go down there, they tell you we don't guarantee this. There's a lot of cryptozoology down there. That
cryptocurrency.
Yeah, cryptocurrency
probably should be there too.
Our archives don't guarantee. The government archives don't guarantee.
But I think
people try to get in there. That's why there's. I'll go on a rant here about why.
Okay, your turn. Then my turn.
The government has armed people down there, Mr. Sheehan, because they don't want people coming and trying to put forged documents into the archives.
Who? Where? What? Are you kidding?
Have you ever gone to Archives One? Those are there's a big bunch of surly guards there.
No, okay.
Okay, so
here's
what you do. You go into Archives One and do you have anything that's got a seal on it? Let me see your material.
Yeah, that's comforting though.
Yeah, and I mean they're not nice about it. They don't have to be polite. You come there to use the material. It's the government's material, and the guards know that they are the barrier for people not bringing stuff in. And then like Sandy Berger shoving stuff into his underwear and trying to walk out with stuff, and he didn't get enough. The punishment was not enough. He should have got higher punishment. And he should never be able to get a government job again. How about that?
Good rant. I like it. Sweet. So, I mean, with regard to, information and privacy and data and all of that, I mean, we saw Bigelow over, the years, he's paid for sweeping up data, personal information, mining data. Are there people now that are working behind the scenes who wish to not be in a public, spotlight?
There's all kinds of people that have their own private archives, but I mean, I've met people that did a lot of FOIA work at the same time as Todd did, and they won't let you see anything. And the same thing is true in Australia. There's several people I know in Australia that they won't give you the time of day. And it's not, either about sighting reports or other things. And there's family members that have the person's archives, and they won't let anybody see it. And let out a few things at a time. Or the APRO files. They are essentially unavailable to the public. Except National Enquirer microfilmed up to 1972, the files, APRO files. Now, there were 3 microfilms made. 2 of them have gone. Some swindler got them, but we have 1. And then we have other material from microfilm.
Swindler seems to be the common theme in the UFO world.
There's a lot of them in the. There's a lot of unsavory people in ufology. There is UFO data around, so I went up to see people in Canada, and they let me copy their archives. And one of the things was John Musgroves went around to all the UFO organizations he could and collected Canadian material. He got a grant from the Canadian government, as a matter of fact. And so he collected Canadian sighting reports and things. And he went to not only Canadians, but he slept in APRO, and he slept in NICAP, and he went around to people like Ann, and anything Canadian he copied, and he took it up there. So when I went to
you just want to know about the APRO files. Tina passed away, from my understanding, right?
Yes. So it's APRO is tragic, and some Hynek files are gone too. So and some NICAP files are gone, and I'm going to elaborate on that here shortly. And of course, Project Blue Book files are gone. Thank God Hynek got copies of a lot of them. So we were able to see, some of the Project Blue Book inventories say case missing. Well, there's cases missing that aren't on that inventory. So we've been finding them. I got 1,100 cases, and I have not finished my database. 1,100 government cases that are outstanding, that I don't know where they are. Now, every once in a while, we come across one and we run it down.
So let's talk about the databases that are available and have been available since the late 60s with regard to UFO research, and who has the keys to those kingdoms.
So the American Philosophical Society has Condon, Menzel, Phil Klass. They have the American Meteorological Society's head, his files. He had UFO files. He shared them with NICAP. He had UFO files before our own. They weren't meteors. They were close to the ground stuff that, followed people's cars. But he kept them, and then when he became a NICAP board member, he took them. He sent them over. So that's Charles Olivier. So his files are at the APL. Well, McDonald, University of Manitoba has all the Canadian files. They never stopped collecting UFO reports. They stopped investigating.
What about Project Access?
Well, that was supposed to be NICAP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nah, I don't think that was ever. It was a pipe dream. I don't think they ever did anything with it. That was, by that time they had 1 or 2 employees. So whatever was saved, because some of it went into trash cans. But other people have things. So George Early has his files. So I got to look at those. So I got, we got some stuff out of that. I went to the NICAP, Connecticut. We had a sightings officer. So he had the sighting files. He kept a copy. Obviously, Ann kept copies of everything she did. So it's possible to reconstruct a lot of files like that. Files have been shared around. So
to who? Like a handful of people?
I'm talking about everybody shares files.
I know, but like there is a group of people in the UFO world that has been sharing information for a long time, which is great. But who was that little group of people that has been sharing information?
Before there was the internet, there was Louis Farish. So he and several of Charles Flood, some guy in England, I forget his name, myself, we would find old sightings and we Xerox them and put them in an envelope and send it to the next guy. And he would copy those files for himself, and then he would put his stuff in and send it to the next guy.
That's so funny. That's cool. I love that.
That was before the internet. You could, just go on the internet and share it. So Farish had 3 barns full of UFO stuff.
Wow.
But it's all gone. There's a place I call CUFOS East. And Johnson had that, the guy that started the UFO Cat. So he had every case, and he was gathering cases for himself, not just from CUFOS. So he's gathering everything he can, and he's putting it in the UFO Cat. But he left it in a barn and went to Thailand, and the stuff, got destroyed. So
wow.
I am not particularly, I'm not happy that people keep stuff to themselves, but there's a lot of stuff that's just been destroyed through carelessness or spouse
anger.
Anger or revenge. They're, mostly it's husbands that kept stuff afterwards. And, call up the, hello, I want a dumpster here, and I'm loading all my husband's stuff in it, and get it out of here.
It's a very passive aggressive.
Yeah.
I kind of, well.
And then some people, it's my father's stuff. I want it. I don't want to share it with anybody. It's mine. So Larry Fawcett's family, they're not going to let anybody have it. So a lot of cause stuff is lost because of that. And like I say, APRO, she shared files across, she shared files with NICAP. She shared files across things that, other people. So like I said, I've been out visiting people, and they let me copy things. Musgrave, just like we were doing here, I stayed up there with Musgraves. So he let me copy anything I wanted. And he gave me everything that was duplicate. And then when he died, his wife wanted somebody to have it, but they didn't understand what she was trying to give them. So they just left it there. So that was a mistake. So
absolutely,
I understand that MUFON got it. At least it's safe.
That's
the British.
MUFON?
The British destroyed all their files before 1959. Some of it exists because the material was in other places.
But define safe, because I would think that where the Elaine Douglas files are is not safe, and that was a whole debacle in and of itself. So
Well, there's a lot of stuff.
safe, and then there's
it's like Farish's
hidden
barns
from public.
It's like Farish's barns, you know. The stuff was out in the weather and it's destroyed. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's lost. Antonio Rivera told me that, or not Antonio Rivera. Willie Smith told me that Antonio Rivera's stuff was destroyed by the government. They came to the widow's house, ran her out of the house, took his stuff, threw it in dumpsters, and went away with it. I don't know if that story is true or not.
Why would they want to do that?
I don't know. You know, I said, why? I said, other stuff they didn't do that to. Other people they didn't do it
Was
to.
he hanging around the borders of Area 51 and photographing top secret stuff, or?
No, he's a Spanish ufologist.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know. But I'm saying, you know, why was it important to destroy his stuff? I don't know. And apparently they were not very nice to the widow when that happened. It should have been her stuff, you know. So,
Okay,
I'm okay. NICAP moved from Connecticut Avenue. When they did, some kids digging in dumpsters found some UFO stuff. They moved to Rhode Island Avenue. Then they moved somewhere else. Then they ended up in Kensington. So this one guy that's a UFO guy, he was they moved from Kensington. He just happened to be there on this day. They're moving out, and he looked in the dumpster, and there's all kinds of sighting files. So he put everything he could into his station wagon and rode away. So then the UFO, the NICAP files were sold to
Nazi.
CUFOS.
Well, what about the?
CUFOS. So then,
Let's talk about the mailing list for NICAP.
yeah, but that's nothing. That's got nothing to do with anything being lost.
No, it just has to do with being
That's
sold
stupid.
to
That's
Nazis.
stupidity. Well, I don't think he knew they were Nazis when he did it.
How?
The guy is not Acuff was not a very smart person.
Well, you can't. You got to be dumber than a stump to sell
Well, he
your
didn't
email
know-
list to a Nazi
He
sympathizer.
didn't know who he was selling it to. That was just one of their things. How are we going to make extra income? Now, the second sale, they should have known.
The second sale to a Nazi.
Yeah, they did. They sold it the first time, and that organization came back and said most of these people are dead because they didn't keep their membership records up. So they demanded another list, and I think they had to pay for it. But you know, by that time, NICAP was ineffective, anyways. The last thing that they did was get they found out about where the northern tier sightings were at the National Military Command Center. And that may have been a security violation, and Acuff may have been subject to going to jail, but he wasn't pursued on that.
So, did anybody during that time when the email list was sold twice to a Nazi in you know, I mean, did anybody?
Nobody's saying, "Hey, these guys are Nazis." They're just a regular, you know. Hey, we'd like to buy the mailing list. It's so. Here's our check.
I think it's.
That's not what it wasn't.
So nobody knew
Nobody
about
knew.
Ernst Sundell.
That's what I'm trying to say. Stupid and ignorant. That's
yes, very much so.
And I think the NICAP board was what they were trying to do was separate the investigative part of NICAP from the administrative. And so they hired Acuff, who was the administrator of about 10 businesses.
Very interesting businesses too.
Yeah, they're all over the place, and some of them were a nonprofit. And he had a certain amount of hours he was supposed to spend on administration. And it's not like he had his time split between 10. I mean, he had people working for him too, but this is not the smartest. This is not the best tool in the shed. This is a guy that's not very sharp.
Do you think that was just a mistake and it was a money grab on his part?
Well, they were told, do some kind of thing that you can get money out of NICAP besides just having a UFO investigator subscriptions. So a lot of organizations sell
their
email
right,
list.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely, but in his case, they didn't investigate who they were. But they got feedback from the members after a while.
I guess.
I guess George Early said, you know what, I don't think I'll. I know that's my NICAP address there.
Yeah, that wouldn't
because
like
it was there was a mistake in his name. It was his name had an extra E in it, and so he knew where it came from, and he said, I think I won't renew anymore. But they were already dead. They were just limping along.
Well,
and like I said, each move they lost parts of their files. And then they sold the material to CUFOS. On the weekend, Hall and one of the professors over the University of Maryland got a truck, and Acuff said you could take everything you can haul out of here, and it ends Monday morning. So they took everything they could. So they probably left stuff behind. Then it went to the Chicago affiliate head, and somehow he got into an argument with Hynek. So they didn't get all of NICAP's files. So that's the same thing with the Project Blue Book files. At the end of Project Grudge, they were dumped on the floor. Anybody that wanted to could take souvenirs. People did. Lots of souvenirs. So,
but let's get back. I want to ask you one more question, and then obviously we're going to have to do another show with you while you're here, because we've got many things to talk about and many wonderful discoveries in the archive here. But where did the Antarctica mythos and some of the Nazi flying saucers, where did that come into play in the UFO topic? Who inserted that into the narrative? And
UFO nuts. That's all I could say. I'm sure there are people that are still Nazis that want to use a recruiting tool as UFOs as a recruiting tool. So
thank you.
The Germans in, I think it was the 1930s, they sent an Antarctic expedition down there, one ship, and I don't think it ever landed on the Antarctic continent. It went down there and went around, and that was it. And that's the origin of the Nazi UFO station. Look, Antarctica, all your stuff has to come from somewhere. There's not big farms down in Antarctica. There's not there. Germans didn't have enough. In the Second World War, didn't have enough ships to ship stuff down there. This is ridiculous. But there's plenty of people in ufology that will believe it. So then, supposedly after the war, you signed up in the war for the duration plus 6 months. Well, they had a lot of people sitting around, so Admiral Byrd said, "Let's send an expedition down to Antarctica," and that turned into, we're fighting the Nazis that are in Antarctica. So where's the Nazis getting all their supplies from? Who's bringing their supply? Well, some people say UFOs, because the Nazis figured out how to make UFOs after they took all the Jews who were physicists and ran them out of Germany or either killed them, but somehow the Germans made UFOs because they're
mystical.
Yes, mystical.
I love
the Viral. Yeah, everything's mystical, occulting.
Right.
So
it makes it very glamorous, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's also a recruiting tool.
Right. Right.
I've seen some Nazi stuff on U.S. television, which is on these open channel, and it's professionally done, and it's set around the country to these groups of 10 or 20 people, and it's open access television. They got to let you on. So there's still plenty Nazis in Germany or in Europe. They're all over the place, and there's some in there's plenty in the United States too. But generally, I don't see the United States having a lot of Nazis as far as ufologists.
And that's what I think is interesting, because like you said, it can be used as a recruitment tool. And I think that's something that is very important for people to understand.
Sure,
like a lot of organizations, or, the New Age movement, a lot of these, it's
New Age is it springs from fascism. New Age springs from fascism. So, I belong to the biggest anti-Nazi organization in the United States, which was the U.S. Army. So I have no all these people say, I want to raise my children in a New Age atmosphere. Why, you stupid idiot.
Getting
Do you
real
know where this came from?
Aldrich.
Do you know where this came from? The Americans thought of eugenics before the Nazis did. In fact, Hitler put in the German newspapers, we owe a debt to the Americans for eugenics. How great are we? Yeah, it's not a proud moment, let me tell you. There's other organizations and people that have statues around here that the reason that the organization existed was it was non-white. We're going to and the people will not acknowledge that this is where our organization came from.
I appreciate you talking about that, because you have, your service to our country, and that is really important. And you have done, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you saying that things can be used as recruitment tools, because I really can't stress that more than I can right now. And I have been.
Well, somebody's doing a professional, type of recruitment, and then they get to put it on, by a bunch of bohunks get it on their local television thing. So, I mean, there's, it's, I don't know. I read the book about the national, who was his name? The American Nazi Party. I forget who was the head of that, but I read his book, and they tried everything, and they went through that's the bunch that went through Skokie. They marched through Skokie, and the Supreme Court said they had to. The Supreme Court said they had to, and the people of Skokie said yes, they could come. They have to come because it's freedom of speech. And now anybody says anything wrong on TV, we want to take them out and string them out. So we're going backwards. Civil liberties are going backwards. I know one time while I was in Germany, this happened. Some Germans went and laid wreaths at Auschwitz delegation. And as the needles fell off and all the leaves and everything fell off, there was little Nazi swastikas on that. So, I mean, the Schrecklichkeit still exists. And there's still Nazi militias in some countries.
The United States, unfortunately.
Not to the extent that it's overseas.
I don't know, but anyway, I appreciate this because
I don't know of tens of thousands of Nazis. I know there's some in Lebanon. I know there's some in places in South America. A lot of the people that went to the South America in the 30s were Nazis, and they were recruited. And the Americans did a pretty good job of having like a secret war or derailing their attempts to use South America as a springboard or as help for the fatherland.
Isn't that one of the places Elizondo visited?
Yeah, but there's I think Argentina is probably a worse place. There's at least 50 communities down there. That doesn't mean that every German community in South America is a Nazi.
No, absolutely not. No.
There are, but there's secret Nazis and there's more
open
people out there that are open, and some of the regimes have been fascist. Juan Perón, hey. I mean, come on.
Well, I don't mean to laugh. I cannot believe that we have talked about so many things, and I really appreciate you talking about this. This is very important. Thank you. And obviously, guys, we're going to come back. We're going to do another show while Jen is here. And just so you know, we're not sure when it's going to happen, but just make sure you're watching, my YouTube channel, and it will happen, because this is a very important and a lively dialogue, and I really appreciate having Jen here. And we're making discoveries, and we're having fun, you guys, and having important conversations. And I think Jen and I have maybe had like 5 hours of sleep since he got here.
So there's a comment that says Argentina is not. Well, they've had fascist regimes in Argentina.
Absolutely. And thanks guys for everything. And thank you, Mario, and thanks Steve and all of you, Amy, and Amy, great comment. I love that. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Jen, for being here at the archive. This has been fun. It's been a learning experience, and I can't wait to make more discoveries tomorrow and the day after and the day after, and we'll just get it going on. And Alice, thanks for listening to the show, and I'm so excited to see you very soon. So thank you very much. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, the Earth and Rudan. You guys take care, and you can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out our nonprofit and also to support our work. And thank you all to my Patreon subscribers for helping pay the cost for doing this broadcast. So thanks, you guys. Thank you, Jan. And now we're going to go get some sleep, get some food, and gear up. So thanks, you guys. Take care, and we will see you sometime in the next week. You just don't know when. I'm so mysterious.
Can you get those comments back? Because there's people we didn't answer their questions.
Yeah, we will probably get to those questions. We'll get to those questions probably the next time. So, because we've got, thanks, Drew, everybody there. Yeah, we will get back to those questions. We need to take a break now, Jan. It's official. Okay, bye, you guys. We're going to try to roll the outro. See you guys soon.